And that's the hard way from point A to point B what was totally gut-wrenching. For me, the first thing you hear, or you could be laying in bed or you can be sitting in the living room, whatever the case may be, is you start to hear this whirling, whipping sound inside your head at a low RPM. It starts getting louder and louder and faster. The RPMs start to increase. The next thing that happens is you feel a sensation in the pit of your stomach, and it starts working its way up to your upper torso, and when it reaches your heart starts racing at like 1,000 miles an hour. Da, 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 da. So you think like, my God, I'm going to have a heart attack. The sound gets louder, the RPMs increase, your respiration increases even more, and then the next sensation is an acceleration. Only instead of feeling like you're being pulled up, you feel like you're being pulled down. And it's the best way I can describe it would be like you're going down a roller coaster only 100 times faster. Now, you're paralyzed at that point. You can't see. You're screaming inside your head because you can't move your mouth. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then, boom, you black out. When you come to, or when I became conscious, I was at point B. Now, here's where point B was for this person for 6 years, at least. In this room, on board this craft, and I found myself in the same place every time for those first 6 years, sitting on this bench, and in front of this bench was a table. I call it a screen table. And it was artificial intelligence. And I think, and now we're talking almost 20 years ago, it was a teaching machine. It read you, it knew you, it got to know you. That was just the beginning of the fun. About 5 or 8 feet in front of that table was a wall which had a screen on it. I was paralyzed with the exception of the fact that I could move my head up and I could move my head down to see that screen on the screen table, and I could move my head up to see anything that was going on the screen on the wall. And my right hand and arm were resting up against the table and wrist where I can move my right forefinger as if you're doing something like an Etch-a-Sketch when you were a kid. And however, any mark or stroke I would make would either show up on that screen or it would, on the screen table, or it would show up on that wall. Okay, now I don't know where I am. I don't know why I'm there. I'm almost completely paralyzed. And now here's their social skills. 0. The first thing that comes up was the block letter A. Next to the block letter A on this screen was a symbol that they wanted me to trace as an equivalency or to the block letter A. And so the first telepathic message from these guys, which was sketch the symbol for the A. And I just went, of course, like anybody else would, no. Why am I here? Why am I this? Screaming, yelling, boom. Vocal cords paralyzed. Sketch the symbol. No. Inside my head. And the basis of teaching in those early years were on punishment and reward. So when I would refuse to do it, the air pressure, and it would go like a thump, would increase in the room, and it would put pain in my ears, and they would go, trace the letter. And I would go, no. Then it would increase in levels until the pain was almost intolerable, and I stroked the first, or traced the first stroke to the symbol, and then all the things about the hard way happened, and I was back home. Okay, that was my first fun experience with those guys. Now, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know what was going on. My wife thought I lost my mind. When I went to my friends, they said, Jim's a pretty normal, honest person, but I think he's lost it. At that time, I went to the church. I used to go to church a lot. When I went to the church with it, they said it was demonic, and then I'd sit there at church, and all the spaces and the seats would be empty next to me. And that's the way I was. And I was like telling people, you wouldn't believe what's going on. Anyway, my family figured I lost it. Now, this stuff went on for a period of 2 to 3 times a week, every week. Sometimes it would be, weeks would be 9 or 10 times a month, sometimes it would be 15 times a month, and that went on heavy like that the first 18 months. And every time I was pulled, I was sitting in that same stupid bench in that same stupid place, tracing block letters to a symbolic equivalency, and I thought this thing was an alien alphabet. It went from A to no Q's and no Z's. And then it went to a number system that was based on 6. Now, during all of this stuff, I just can't tell you, I can tell you how much the loathing, the hate, the focus of anger that I had, and all I wanted to do was kill these guys because it's really started affecting me and my home life. Fortunately for me at that time in the business that I had a partnership, J&J Properties. It was in North Carolina. So my partner was taking care of that part of the business. And then I had enough money to buffer me through these first 6, 7 years because I wasn't even able to do my work or wasn't able even to do my business. It got to the point where I started losing. I lost something like 38 pounds. I wasn't, it made me so crazy that, of course, my wife, she disappeared after a while. God, imagine that. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. My fingernails were growing, and the best way I can describe myself is as it got into was I looked like Howard Hughes in his last days. Okay. So during the course of all of this, they extracted semen. During the course of all this, they did emotional experiments. During the course of this, they would do mental experiments. And all of this mess was based on punishment and reward. But when it came to the reward, when they would offer a reward after a good session, I always refused the rewards because, again, all I wanted to do was kill these guys. They're cold, they're non-emotional, and what was going on made no sense, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. I inevitably got to the point where I decided that I was going to kill an alien. There's no doubt about it, I was going to kill these guys. So what I didn't know was happening was a couple of things at that time. For starters, that converting block letters into an alien symbolic equivalency turned out to be one of the most fascinating things that one could ever experience, because they went through this meticulous detail on going through the motion, it sounded out, the direction and the motion was important. And after this alphabet thing was on one session, after I had gotten the A's all the way through the no Q's and Z's, they presented 50 pages of text on this screen. And it was a story about a friend of mine, and his name was Jerry. And it was written where I could read it. So I started, as I could read one page in regular writing, is where Jerry was born and how he was raised and his likes and his dislikes, and as a toddler growing into puberty. And it went page after page after page, and then when it came to the point of the present, the story kept reading as if into the future. And so at the end of those 50 pages, I said, why are you doing this? What is your point with this? Da, da, da. I made up cuss words for these guys. Well, then, after I said that, they took on that screen and put about a paragraph, less than a half a page, of that symbolic stuff that they had converted, and I could read it real fast, and I got the whole story within a matter of a minute. And I went, wow. Okay, now, this took years to even get to the point as to why they were pulling this. Now, this got even better. They then came out with something that looked like the size of a 50-cent piece coin. And then it was like a shorthand version of these symbols, and they flashed the coin. It wasn't a coin, but it was round like that with the symbols in it. You look at it, and then you got the whole story in a split second. And I always like to describe it this way, I always like to describe it this way, which is, what's the latest and greatest movie going on right now? Just name a movie.